So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this workshop on building digital capability for senior leaders. It's really a pleasure to have everybody here today. And just as a very slight introduction to the workshop, and of course the facilitators will give us a whole lot more details on this, but just from my perspective and for everybody in the workshop, this is part of a project that the British Council is undertaking to investigate the needs and requirements of universities and their staff, and that includes academics, professional service personnel, and university leaders, along with policymakers and other national stakeholders in determining the capacity to respond to the rapidly changing world of digital higher education. So I think the idea of this particular project by the British Council is to fund a range of exemplar projects and studies that will contribute to an analysis of the prevailing situation with regards to the adoption and adaptation of digital education in universities in sub-Saharan Africa. And Nigeria is one of the countries that the Council has an interest in. So in the first phase of this project, the Council has appointed Jisc, which is the UK NREN, to conduct an initial needs assessment and run a series of workshops for a select number of African countries. And Jisc are in turn partnering with Eko-Konnect to undertake these activities in Nigeria. So that's sort of like a very brief overview of what the project is about. And I think while I'll be doing the introductions, we will want you to fill in the chat window something that you want to be able to learn or take away from the workshop. So as I'm going through the introductions, you can all start to actually put in the chat what you hope to get out of the workshop. And it would also be nice if you can actually put in your names, your job titles or designations, and the institutions or organizations that you come from. Obviously, there'll be quite a lot of you in this workshop, so we may not have the time to introduce every attendee. So it'd be nice if you all kind of introduce yourselves in the chat window at the bottom, and I will proceed to introduce our facilitators and some of the other panelists that are with us today. So I think most of you know who I am. I'm Owen Iyoha, and I oversee the operations of Eko-Konnect Research and Education Initiative. And I'm sure that all of you in some form or the other have had interactions with Eko-Konnect and probably with me personally. So my job today is to kind of moderate and just help to as an interface while the workshop is going on. And the workshop itself is going to be really managed by our facilitators, and I'd just like to introduce them. Sarah Knight is the head of learning and teaching transformation at Jisc, and she manages the team that supports the digital experience insight services, which is about researching staff and students' expectations and experience of the digital environment, and the team who are developing building digital capability service. And that's to support the development of staff and student digital capabilities. Sarah has worked for Jisc for 16 years, and during her time at Jisc, she's led large transformation projects on curriculum design, digital literacies, and learners' experiences of technology. Working with her today is Lisa Gray. She's a senior consultant learning and teaching in the Higher Education Directorate at Jisc. She provides leadership on the use of technology to enhance learning, teaching, and assessment. Now, for 15 years, she's led a range of innovation and change programs that explore enhancements in assessment, employability, e-portfolios, and curriculum transformation. And she has spoken and written about her work nationally and internationally. Lisa's leading research on building digital capabilities, providing tools and resources to enable staff and students to develop the digital capabilities needed to live, learn, and work in a digital society. So in short, we've got some very experienced experts here who are going to be facilitating this workshop. I'd just like to also mention that on the panel are some other members of Jisc who are working on the Digital University Africa project in different shapes and forms. So we have Phil Bailey, Thomas Stoner, and I think we have Laurie Phipps here as well, who I've had the pleasure of working with quite closely over the last few weeks, conducting interviews with different stakeholders in the education system in Nigeria. And I think we also have the lead for the project, Dr. Sarah Wilkinson. She's also on the panel. Sarah, I don't know if you're there. I'd like to say a quick hello before we get started.
Hi, Owen. Yeah, thanks for introducing me. Yeah, I'm Esther Wilkinson. I'm Head of International at Jisc. We've been working with the British Council on this project for a few months now. And I just want to thank everybody for participating. This is really important to us and to learn from you. And we very much see this as the beginning, the project as the beginning of a long-term partnership, even though it's only a few months long as it is. We've just one other final thing to say. We've just been overwhelmed with the graciousness and the participation with everybody that we've interviewed and been dealing with over the last few months. So again, just thanks from us, and we look forward to working with you more in the future.
All right, thanks, Esther. And it's been a pleasure likewise working with you and all your team. It's been a great learning experience for Eko-Konnect staff, and we do really look forward to working with you as we move forward. Anyway, let's try to get into this workshop. A few protocols that I'm sure most of you are pretty much familiar with. Those of you who are joining the workshop, you would really need to look at the icons at the bottom or top of your Zoom windows for the icons that control your sound. And for those of you in particular who may be sitting in the same room with one another, potentially, it would be useful to actually have your headphones on so that we reduce any potential echo. The chat window is available for comments. So if you're having any challenges or difficulties, you can actually put some messages in the chat window, and somebody from the panel will sort of help with that. If you do have any questions that you want to ask verbally during the workshop, you can click on the raise hand icon, and that will be noted, and at the appropriate time, one of the moderators will notify the facilitators that you want to ask a question, and that will be dealt with at the time. But generally speaking, as the workshop is proceeding and you've got any thoughts or questions, you can actually put those questions in the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen typically, or it may be at the top depending on your settings. But you can see the chat window, the question and answers windows, and you can put any questions you have there, and the facilitators will either respond to those questions in the chat window, or at an appropriate time during the workshop, those questions will be adequately answered. Yes, as I just mentioned, a tip, for built-in speakers and microphones on laptops, because they might create echoes and feedback, we advise you wear your headsets if you can. And remember as well, when you're actually putting any comments or questions in the chat window, remember to use the drop-down list to select the appropriate persons or group of people that you want to address your question to. So if it's an open question for all panelists and attendees, then you can select all panelists and attendees. If it's specific to a panelist, then choose the appropriate option from the drop-down window. But typically, I would assume that any comments or questions you have should be available to all of us to see, typically. Right. This workshop will be recorded, and it will be made available afterwards. And there's a link there to the YouTube recording. Right. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Sarah and Lisa so we can start the workshop proper. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Owen. And would you like me to share my screen? So if you're able to stop sharing.
I will stop sharing mine.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Well, a very, very warm welcome to this workshop. We're really delighted to be with you today, and we're very much looking forward to learning from you as well and hearing all about the practice that you are undertaking within your universities. A little bit of background before we get into the agenda for today. And I know, Owen, thank you very much for that introduction, and to Esther for just outlining the terms of reference and the work that the British Council is doing in this area. So we are delighted to be working with Owen and Eko-Konnect and to be here today as part of the Digital University in Africa project, and very much looking to gather a set of recommendations and knowledge and experience that we can share back to the British Council, which will inform this wider programme of projects that they are funding across sub-Saharan Africa. So very exciting opportunity for us to be collaborating with you today. In particular, our project is focusing on the two strands. So as Owen mentioned, our colleague Laurie Phipps has been working with Owen to undertake some interviews with senior leaders to gain that national and institutional perspective around policy and strategy in relation to digital transformation. And I know we've found those interviews extremely informative and have really welcomed the opportunity of getting to know the landscape and the work you're doing in Nigeria. Today, we're going to be focusing on the second strand of the project, and that's very much looking at supporting you with digital literacy, digital skills, looking at the new opportunities that digital is bringing with the transformed landscape that we're working in with the COVID pandemic. And very much looking to bring out some of the learning that you are undertaking, but also being able to share some of the learning that we have experienced within the UK, and hopefully offering some tools, some resources, some ideas, some dialogue that you will be able to build on from today and take forward within your own university to help support your staff and students with developing their digital skills further. So for us as a team and as a project, we're very much looking to produce a set of recommendations that can really take forward the digital transformation agenda within Nigeria and look for further opportunities for collaboration. So moving forward into our workshop aims today, we have got a packed agenda, and I know normally this would be something that we would be doing face to face. We would have a day and we would really be able to work with you to work through the challenges that we know we're all encountering at the moment in terms of online learning and the landscape that we're working within. We're going to look at developing a shared understanding around digital capabilities and the skills that we need to live, learn and work in a digital world, and how that relates to you as a leader and in your organizational context. We're going to share some of the challenges, and I think those challenges are helpful to surface so that we can actually look and identify some possible solutions, but also feed into the recommendations of the project. Look and exploring what's working well, and what practice and you are able to share from your perspective that is helping your staff and students work in a very different way to what we are usually used to share our approaches and some of the resources which we hope we can use and you're able to take forward in your own practice. And we will be doing a similar workshop with our colleagues in South Africa to again inform the recommendations of the project going forward. And we hope at the end of this day, there will be at least one thing that you will be able to take forward, and we'll have addressed some of the aims and objectives that you have and you've been sharing within the chat window around your expectations for today. So in a little bit more detail, I'm going to be sharing with you and introducing what digital capabilities mean. And I think if I asked all of my colleagues on the panelists as well as yourselves, we would perhaps have all different interpretations of what it means to be digitally capable in respect to our role, in respect to our discipline area, in respect to our lives outside of our professional work. And that's what we'll be exploring in terms of the different aspects of digital and what areas for our further development. We'll also be looking more specifically about how that relates to skills that you need currently in your organisation to really use the benefits that technology can offer and to really help your staff and students progress with their digital practices. We have got the opportunity for you to identify and understand your own digital capabilities, and more on that shortly. We'll be surfacing some of the challenges in developing the capabilities of your staff and students, and then ending with the opportunity of looking at ways in which you can start to build and further develop what a digitally capable organisation looks like. So please do put your comments into the chat window. We will be monitoring that, as Owen said. And if you have got any specific questions, we'll be pausing at each section break to make sure that we have opportunity for you to ask those questions. We have also got the question and A panel as well in Zoom that you're able to enter those in if you want to type them in. Now, as this is a session around digital capabilities, we do want to encourage you to use some different digital tools today so that you are also gaining the experience of developing your skills and using the range of tools that we have available in this online environment. So we will be introducing you to Menti, to Padlet. We'll be using some Zoom polls within the platform, and we'll also be using the opportunities of engaging with you within Zoom. Now, just to pause here, just as a reminder to say that pre-workshop, we did send you some information about the workshop resources that we're going to be working through. So you will have a document there that has got all the links that we're going to be talking about today to the resources, so you can access those after the workshop. But also one that related to the Jisc discovery tool. And while I talk through the next section, it may just be worthwhile you having a look to see if you can find that document and just making sure that you are able to follow the logging in instructions. Then if you have got any questions or concerns, we can help you during the course of the workshop, because we are hoping that will be something that you'll find very valuable in being able to assess your capabilities and areas for development through the resources that we're able to share with you today. So before I move on to the next section, I'm just going to check with Lisa and Owen just to see if there were any questions or comments in the chat that we need to pick up on at this point, or if we can move on to the next section.
I don't think so. I think what we've been seeing at the moment have been introductions. Okay. People have been introducing themselves in the chat. But I just want to reiterate to anyone, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat window or the Q&A chat as well.
Thank you, Owen. So the first section is looking at what we mean and what we understand by digital capabilities. And this is important because I think we all will have very different experiences, different expectations around how we are currently using digital. And I know certainly when we have this conversation with staff that we work with, everyone has a very different view of what it means to be digitally capable. Now, we'd really encourage you at this point to see if you can use Menti, which is a tool that is freely available and allows you to use with your students and with your staff to gather responses. So if you're able to open up a web browser window and type in www.menti.com, you will get to a screen where it will ask you for a code. And if you are able to enter that code that's on screen there, you will then be able to enter your ideas into the Menti, and we'll create a word cloud from the responses that you share with us. So I'll give you a few minutes just to see if you're able to do that. Thank you, Lisa, for putting the code into the chat. And I will just share my screen and move to Menti to show you how those would look as we come through. So hopefully you can also see my Menti screen, and when you're able to enter those responses, we'll start to see those coming through on the screen. And thinking about the different ways that you use technology, what does that mean to you? Does it mean is it the different ways in which you can use technology? Is it the different skills that you need? Is it enabling you to do different things that you have perhaps done before? Does it allow more flexibility? Is it challenging? And there is no right or wrong answer to this. This is an opportunity just to think about, in your role, in your university, what does it mean to be digitally capable? Starting to see some great responses coming in there. Yet really important, yes, and we've got the word business in there. It's probably fundamental to the way that we are operating, both in education and obviously outside of education at the moment. It's very much about online teaching at the moment, as we're doing today. We're all working in a very different way to the way that we are used to working, and the importance of having ICT skills is essential. It's no longer an option. And we've got some uses of the internet, yes, office automation, ability to use different ICT tools, and that's something we're going to pick out in a bit more detail, because when we think about the different types of technology and the different skills that students and staff need to be able to use those effectively, there's a great variety of different skills that we need to be honing and improving our experience of. Super, that's brilliant. Please keep adding those thoughts into the Menti. I'm going to go back to the slides, but we will return to that, and we will be able to share that post-event as well, so we can see where we are with that. So I'm just going to go back down to the slide that we were on. And I'm going to just now perhaps prompt you to think about digital capabilities in a bit more of a wider context. This was a lovely video clip that was produced by University of Derby, who worked with their students to answer the question, what are digital capabilities? And this is a nice short video clip that perhaps just will give you a slightly different perspective around the different skills that we need. So we will play that. I'm hoping that
technology is entering nearly all aspects of our life. So much now can and is done using a digital platform. Communicating, finding information, shopping, tracking our health and solving problems are just some of the activities which are increasingly facilitated by digital tools. This is why our digital capabilities, the skills, knowledge and understanding which help us live, learn and work in a digital society are so important. Employers are increasingly looking at what digital capabilities applicants and employees have. Skills in creating documents, presentations, spreadsheets and communicating via email and social media are areas which are important to most organisations. They want people to use technologies to access information, creative, innovative, solve problems, communicate, participate, learn and support others in digital spaces. As technology is constantly changing, it's a really good idea to reflect on our own digital capabilities. We should make time to develop those skills that we might not be as confident with, or that we are likely to use more of in the future. We may be able to easily operate a smartphone or find the answers to most questions, but can we assess the reliability of the information we find? We might be able to communicate across different platforms, but can we choose the most appropriate communication for the task at hand? Can we manage our digital identity so it reflects us in the way that we want? And can we manage the time we spend interacting with technology? Thinking about how we develop our digital capabilities will help us become better prepared for an increasingly digital world. Take some time to explore digital capabilities and work out what you already do well and what you may need to develop for the future.
So hopefully that just gave you a few thoughts around the different ways in which technology can be used. And we're going to be picking up on further expansion around those terms of digital capabilities and some of those terms that we used in that video clip in the next session, which Lisa is going to be leading shortly. So this question we're posing here, why are digital capabilities important? Perhaps a year ago, or 2 years ago, we might have answered this quite differently. But certainly with the advent of the pandemic, we know that that has certainly changed things. And I'm going to hand over now to Owen, just to share the Nigerian context, and then I will follow on with that with some UK context.
Thank you, Sarah. And we're just getting warmed up with this workshop, so thank you for the introduction. And I'm hoping that all the attendees are getting a feel for what this workshop is going to be offering. But from a Nigerian context, I think I'm going to be saying things that might actually be more informative for the Jisc panelists than our attendees. I'm sure they're very familiar with the items that have been listed here, but I will go through them. We all know that the COVID-19 pandemic, certainly in Nigeria, heightened the need for e-learning and digital skills from the perspective of university staff, students, and in order for our universities to actually operate. So the pandemic just put a spotlight on some of the inadequacies that maybe we had prior to the pandemic in terms of leveraging digital technology for teaching and learning at higher education. So it did do that. What it also did was that the governments and other stakeholders for research and education in the country were very proactive in terms of looking at policies that would help to make the adaptation to the situation that we found ourselves in, where we were forced to basically take on e-learning technologies and video conferencing and collaboration technologies in order to evolve the way that education and learning was delivered. So the government were very proactive in trying to ensure that they came up with the adequate policies that would help institutions to do that. And as a result of the policies, both from government and maybe internally as well, academic staff are being mandated to migrate their courses and research into learning management systems, institutional repositories that maybe librarians manage, and publishing platforms. So all of these require that staff have the prerequisite digital skills to be able to do that. And understandably so, some staff will be unfamiliar with using digital tools in this manner. So we do know that academic staff may need some skills. Some might be hard skills, some might be soft skills in order to be able to perform the tasks that are required of them. And I think the last point I want to sort of touch on is being able to support students, because in the quest for universities to ensure that they can have all the digital skills and capabilities to teach, sometimes I think students are kind of neglected in that whole process, because there's an assumption sometimes that students are kind of very technically adept. And while that is the case with some students, there's still a whole lot of students that don't really have these skills, particularly those students that maybe have limited access to devices like laptops and internet connectivity. So that in itself would cause some challenges for students. So I think one of the things, at least from an Eko-Konnect perspective as well, we'd like to hear from attendees of this workshop is how universities are supporting students as well in being able to acquire some of the digital skills that they need to evolve their own ways of learning and absorbing information that's being delivered using digital platforms and technology. Ola, I think there might be a hand raised or there's a question. So this might be a good time to answer any question. Ola, was there a hand raised?
Yes, Nura Abubakar Alumi, you can speak now. I see your hand is up, so you've been given permission to speak. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to ask any question. Yes, you can proceed.
Oh, okay. All right. In that case, if there are no questions, I'll hand back to, even before I hand back to Sarah, are there any comments? Are we in agreement with some of the things I've sort of outlined here? Because really, I'm trying to put a perspective of the Nigerian context. So if there are any comments in terms of agreement, disagreement, or any points I might have missed, it'd be great to hear any questions. I think there's a raised hand, Ola, from Ahmed Shafi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ahmed. Yes, Shafi, we can hear you. Good morning.
Good, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I think what Owen has really stated is like hitting the nail right in the head with 6 inches nail, because these are really the issues that the country is facing. Right now, most of the universities carrying capacity for their students is grossly inadequate. You will find a typical class that is supposed to take, say, 200 students, is now settled with almost 500 or 1,000 students. And when the COVID-19 comes, it made the situation worse. So because of the social distancing has to be observed, so the number of students that you really need to train has now jumped from where it is to even a double figure. So making teaching and learning extremely difficult. So going on to the e-learning platform is really the only way out, as you can see it here in this country, for us to really either maintain or improve on the quality of the education that we deliver in this country. And the greatest challenge, like he has mentioned, is really the staff and the students. The staff, even though some of them have ICT skills, they lack the skills required to really move their courses online. And the students have difficulty even accessing the network. In most cases, the internet bandwidth is grossly inadequate. The skills set is not there. The access devices are grossly inadequate. Where students have their mobile devices, the cost of data, if they go outside the university community, is so exorbitant that they may not be able to do it. So really, if this workshop can really focus on all these issues and provide some policy directions and on how these things can be addressed, I'm sure most of the institutions in this country will find this thing extremely useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shafe, for very insightful comments, and I really appreciate your contribution. And you touched on a range of issues there, and the project, this Digital University Africa project, is actually going to certainly be taking everything you mentioned on board as considerations. So there are different aspects to this project, and yes, there's infrastructure, the lack of devices. Some of the infrastructure problems are very pertinent to the challenge. But what is also very important as well, and I think what this workshop is certainly trying to home in on, is that even if we had all the infrastructure, even if at least our staff were equipped with the devices and bandwidth was adequate, there's still the issue of the human capacity in terms of the ability of universities to effectively create and disseminate their course materials and teach effectively so that students can learn. And I think that particular aspect of the challenges is what this workshop will probably focus on a little bit more, but I do appreciate the wider challenges, and maybe we will discuss that towards the end of this workshop. And of course, many of you have been engaged in interviews that have been conducted with Professor Phipps. So again, as Sarah had said at the beginning of this workshop, all of this will sort of be collated together. They will be writing a report and feeding back to the British Council on all of the things that they've learned. So thank you very much for that, Shafe. And Sarah, I think I can let you take charge again.
Thank you, Owen. And yes, I know, really important that we do highlight what the challenges are. And as Owen has said, yes, very much recognise that the issues of access are fundamental. And what we hope to be able to today is again, feed into the recommendations in the report where those challenges are. But what we hope we can do is at least start you on that journey of being able to support your staff and students with some resources to help them identify the areas that they need to support on with their digital skills, and being able to teach in an online environment. And we will pick up on that as we go through the workshop as well. So just a very brief overview in terms of Jisc. We are similar in many ways to Eko-Konnect in terms of having a remit for supporting universities and further education colleges within the UK. We have a variety of different ways in which we do that through providing the infrastructure support with the network and being able to support colleges with the underpinning infrastructure. We work with universities to very much develop their practice. That is both in relation to learning and teaching and assessment, but also to research. We produce advice and guidance to help universities on their journey, because there are similar issues around developing staff and student skills that we are experiencing in the UK as well. So we do need to work very closely to support colleagues with the development of their skills, and also look at where we can actually develop new sort of technological solutions in order to help some of the challenges, address some of the challenges that our universities are facing. So, Owen, you gave such an excellent overview of why digital capability is important in relation to the Nigerian context, and just a few brief comments that relate to the UK context and the European context that we're working in. And I think that there's no doubt that we are seeing a very rapid shift to digital. And you can see some of the quotes on here related to pre-COVID and the pandemic, and even pre-pandemic, we were recognizing that there were challenges there in relation to upskilling our staff and students and ensuring that we are developing graduates that can leave our universities, that can move into a digital workplace. I thought this would be a useful quote to share. This was from Brad Smith, Microsoft president, and he shared this on a blog post nearly a year ago when we were in the midst of the pandemic. And this quote, I think, is really interesting because it does show the scale of which technology is developing and the expectations that are there in terms of the digital workplace. We often say that a lot of children that are currently in school will be doing and going into careers that don't yet exist. And this quote here is saying that over the next 5 years, we can absorb around 149 million new technology-orientated jobs. And just to see the shift in the digital workplace that we have seen over the last year, that's really touched sort of every aspect of the globe, and also in terms of the work that everyone is undertaking, from food production to healthcare to the automotive industry. So just setting that sort of international context there, and the fact that we do have to really ensure that we are supporting our students and our staff to work in this very digital environment. Now, in the UK, I think, just to reiterate that we do have challenges. They are slightly different, but we are still seeing challenges with access for our students. Students are reporting that despite the infrastructure that we have in the UK, many students are still experiencing issues in terms of the cost of data, the ability to access a device, the ability to access the internet in order to be able to undertake their online learning. We run surveys every year with our students. Now we've just currently gathered 65,000 views from our students in the UK. This was a snapshot of data that we captured earlier this year. And overall, students were feeling that they were getting some support for their online learning. And they were able to access some of the support services that they needed. But, as you can see there, those percentages definitely have got room for improvement. And a question that we have asked every year for our surveys is how learners feel they're able to develop their digital skills and what support they require. And you'll see there that our students are agreeing that they, not all of them have received guidance around the digital skills that they need for their course. They don't necessarily have a chance to be able to assess their digital skills and think about how they can progress those and develop them further. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen in the UK as well on these areas. We currently now in the UK are having a debate, and a lot of universities are quite challenged around thinking about the new academic year, which for us starts in September, and thinking about what that new normal will look like and what that blend of learning will be. And a quote here from Tansy Jessup, who is PVC of Education at the University of Bristol, was putting forward quite a challenging view to say, we cannot return to normal because normal was the problem, and that we do want to ensure that online education can offer the benefits of engagement, interaction, can reach learners that perhaps were not able always to get into university. It can open up many opportunities, and it can reshape the practice as teachers in higher education in terms of moving their practice forward. So although there are challenges, there are also opportunities. In Jisc, we have been working over the last year with universities very closely to gather and understand their challenges, the issues that they have been facing in very rapidly having to move towards online learning. And those comments that you were making earlier about the need to upskill staff, that staff are not used to teaching online, they're not sure what effective online teaching looks like, how to move content very quickly into a learning management system. Those are challenges that UK universities have been experiencing as well. And again, at the heart of the consultation that we did, which is under the umbrella of Learning and Teaching Reimagined, there was a need for greater digital confidence at all levels within the university, from our senior leaders, working with academic staff, to those staff that are working in libraries. Everyone's identifying that they needed more help with their digital skills. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Lisa, who is going to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing with universities and helping them to support their staff and students.
So hello, everyone.
Before Lisa takes over, Sarah, I think there may be 1 or 2 questions. Ola, is that the case? I think I saw 1 or 2 raised hands.
No, sir, there are no raised hands. No.
No raised hands. Okay, my apologies. I thought it was a raised hand.
No, thank you. That was a good point, just a reminder to say if anyone did have any comments, please do feel free to share. I'll hand over to Lisa.
Thanks, Sarah, and for outlining all of the challenges that we've been facing. So we'll be sharing a number of resources with you today that really originate from the work that we've been doing around the building digital capability area at Jisc. We have a building digital capability service. We launched it in October 2018, and we're now working with 88 universities and colleges in the UK around this subscription service. So we'll be sharing the resources really for you to use and take up in the work that you do today from this service. The service works in a number of ways. First, from an individual perspective, to provide tools and resources that can help staff and students self-assess their own capabilities and provide them with some prompts and actions and suggested resources that can help them move forward. But also at an organisational level, we have a maturity model, which I'll share with you today, which just helps you at that organisational level identify what good practice might look like at different levels of maturity, just to provide some examples of ways that you can enhance and the way that the organisation can enable those digital practices. So we also have a community of practice. We have a very vibrant community in the UK where we run 2 free events per year. You'd be very welcome to join our community list, where you'll hear about all the news around the service and around the agenda in particular. So we'll share those links as we go through. One of the things that we did want to move on to talk about was our digital capability framework. And so we can just move the slide forward there. All the work that we've done around the service has been underpinned by this framework. And it's one of the core resources that we'll share with you today, because it really was the starting point to identify a language around what we mean by digital capabilities. We developed it over the last 10 years of research with our university and college sectors to provide this starting point. That the framework itself has been taken and used by many of our universities and colleges just to inform their thinking around how to build consensus within their own colleges and university context, with staff, with students, about what the aspirations and expectations might be about enabling them to be digitally capable. What it also did was it moved us away from talking about just the functional skills, so using a specific tool for a specific job, and got us thinking more about those broader digital practices that we all need to do to live, learn and work in a digital society. And this ranges from how we communicate, how we collaborate and participate in digital environments, how we teach and learn, how we create, digitally create, problem solve and innovate, and find and use and manage and curate information, data, and manage all the different ways that we communicate via different media. So it's an overarching model Digital identity and well-being is very much the cultural piece that runs around the outside and is absolutely core to the model. And the functional skills bit is in the centre there with ICT proficiency, but it's for those 4 core digital practices which also form a very important aspect. So we've got 6 core elements to the model. The full document itself, which Sarah would have posted a link in the chat, provides some examples of exactly what we mean by these capabilities. And it's broken down into 15 subsections. So we would very much recommend exploring the model, seeing how well some of these terms and terminologies work in your context, and explore it as a way of, as I said, both building consensus, but also just starting the conversations within your institutions about how we enable these capabilities amongst our staff and students. If we can move on to the next slide. Thanks, Sarah. But we know that nobody sets out to develop these capabilities in isolation. It's always in relation to a role or a subject or a career goal that we have. So the framework needs to be contextualized for all those different contexts. So we've developed a number of role profiles. These documents start to outline examples of capabilities for different staff roles. We have 9 in total, covering a whole range of staff roles across a university context, from library staff, researchers, teaching staff, learning technologists, instructional designers, and we have one for learners. The one for learners is really the starting point for thinking about how we might build those capabilities for our students into the curriculum. But we were hoping today to just explore one of those profiles with you. So we'll move on to that in a moment. But just to say, our institutions have very much used these as the starting points for their thinking and conversations around where there might be minimum expectations, perhaps, for staff in different roles, to use within teams to articulate whether there are any gaps within a team context. They're very much not to say that everybody has to have all of these capabilities. They're aspirational in nature. So they're saying, you know, what are the innovations that are coming forward? Where might our skills need to be placed? So this is definitely not the only way of thinking about it, or saying that everyone needs to have all of these capabilities, but they provide a really useful starting point for you to think about using them as prompts in the conversations that you might be happening within your universities. So just to pause there in case we have any questions about some of those models.
Does anyone have any questions to ask at this point? What I'm finding very interesting about the workshop is the fact that this is really sort of looking at frameworks and talking about dialogue and how we need to have consensus about how we want to basically move the digital transformation agenda forward. And in my experience, Lisa, with consulting and working with universities over the recent period, what there seems to have been has been an urgency to try to deliver some kind of solution without maybe fully taking on board a lot of the things that are being highlighted here at the moment. And I find this very interesting, that I think, you know, our institutions, our policy stakeholders should give a whole lot more consideration to, rather than just the technical aspects of, oh, put a learning management system up, oh, lecturers, put your course content into the learning management system. It appears to me that there's a whole lot of other issues that need to be considered, particularly leveraging this kind of digital capability framework is a great way for institutions to formulate strategies about delivery of their transformation agendas. I don't know if anyone's got a comment on that from the participants. Okay, I think we can move on, Lisa.
I think that's really insightful, and I think it tends to just epitomise the way that Jisc tends to work. You know, it's not here to say this is how you do it. It's here to say here's some tools and resources that can help inform your goals and your aspirations within your universities. Thanks, Sarah. So if we can move on, please. So we wanted to undertake an activity with you to start thinking about, from a more individual and personal perspective, the skills that you aspire to in the digital environment. We have, as I mentioned, our role profiles, and we wanted to use and have a little look at our digital leader profile. It's based around those framework headings, so the language in the profile is very much relating to those, but it has some very clear examples of some of the skills that might be required in your leadership roles. It encompasses a whole range of leadership roles. We know that there are leaders in every aspect of organisational practice, so it needs to be general and fairly generic to cover that range. And as I mentioned, it's really there to be used by you as individuals that can help to inform a review of your professional development needs, or even just recognise the skills that you already have, which is really important. By teams, leadership teams, just to review the collective skills across the team to inform how you might work together and identify any gaps that you see. And by human resources professionals to ensure that digital capability is also reflected in our job descriptions and in all aspects of professional development for all our staff groups. So if you just have a chance, it was one of the resources that we highlighted within the pre-workshop information. If you're able to get that to hand, that would be really helpful. We would like you to have a little look at that and just spend a few minutes having a browse through some of the examples of the capabilities within that. And we have set up a Padlet, which is just a free tool that enables you to contribute anonymously your thoughts on where the priorities in terms of digital skills might be for you. So Sarah, we can just move on to the slide with a link to the Padlet and pop the link in the chat as well. That would be great, thank you. And in a few moments, we'll just move over to the Padlet so we can see any responses coming in there. If you don't have the profile to hand, please don't let that put you off. We'd be particularly interested really in where you see the emerging digital skill requirements for you in your leadership roles. So if you're happy to add any thoughts to the chat or raise your hand just to share your thoughts on what the critical priorities are for you in your roles, that would also be really helpful. And just let us know if you have any problems accessing the Padlet from that link there.
Probably good to put the link in the chat as well, so people can get to the Padlet.
Added that in, so that should be in the chat for everyone to see. And if you click on there, you'll be able to also use the little star function to identify any of the areas that you think are going to be most relevant. So one of the areas that we're seeing quite a lot of engagement with at the moment in the UK is around digital and data literacy. Because obviously we are, with the online environment, we are gathering a lot more data from our students and the ways in which they are learning. So the importance of our understanding around how we manage that data, how we interrogate that data, how we can analyze that data is an area that we've been noticing as an area for development and further support with. So that might be one area to think about. Communication is another. We know that at the moment, through the environments that we're needing to use, we are spending a lot of our time communicating in an online environment through very many different channels. And similarly, I think on what you were saying about students, it's understanding, if we are thinking about how we communicate with our students, what are the different channels that we can communicate using digital with them on? Is it email? Is it different tools and apps that they might be using? What is going to be the most effective way? And what is the etiquette for communicating online? There's a whole different set of protocols in being able to communicate effectively online as well, that we're needing to get our understanding enhanced through.
And also around those aspects of digital well-being and identity, and whether that has come through in Nigeria as a priority. We know that it certainly has in the UK, in terms of, with the move to increasing digital, how we ensure that our staff and students are not having any downsides from that experience and can manage their digital well-being appropriately. So I think we're seeing in the Padlet some ratings. Thank you very much for those. And do add any comments if you feel that there are any things missing from some of those skills that we've just been highlighting and mentioning within there.
Just shared the screen with a Padlet on, Lisa, so that we can have those areas of the framework up as a reminder.
Lovely. And I think that the ICT proficiency aspect, you know, we touched on earlier before, just those essential skills for getting to basics with tools like Zoom and all the communication tools we're now using as we're all living and working from home. But I think otherwise we're getting some useful feedback that suggests really skills across all those areas of the framework are being recognised as resonating with you, which is really positive.
The area around digital creation is an interesting one. You know, there's a lot more emphasis now on having to prepare content for an online environment and the skills that are needed in relation to that. And I think it's also, again, thinking about the different platforms that students or staff may be using to access that content. You know, keeping content that is going to be accessible to users, to be able to be accessed from various different devices, you know, not content that is going to be, you know, very bandwidth hungry. So it is, again, thinking about the process and the designing of the content that and the understanding around that that's going to be important.
And from a leadership perspective also, that thought leadership piece, you know, to be in a position to be leading and innovating and modelling those behaviours and leading on that thought leadership for the organisation as a whole. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Please do continue to add. Sarah, sorry, did you want to add something before we moved on?
I was just going to say, should I return to the slides, Lisa?
Please, thank you.
I'm just going to get those out for you now.
So just a reminder that all these resources will be available after the workshop, so they won't disappear after the session today. So please do use, explore further, and continue to comment as well. Your thoughts will be very valued on how they resonate with your experiences. Okay, so we're going to just move on just to share another tool and resource that can help you with thinking about your own capabilities, and that's the Jisc discovery tool. So very much underpinned by the framework and the language around that framework in terms of how we talk about digital skills, and also through those role profiles, which started to think about what those skills look like for different staff roles. We wanted then to enable staff and students to be able to self-assess themselves against those areas of capability. So it's very much designed to be a reflective, developmental tool. It's the information within there, the reports that you get, which provide you with an overall level, plus some ideas for next steps and resources that you can follow up. Those reports are all private to you. They sit on the Discovery Tool dashboard. You can download them, save them, you can return to them. So it's not designed to be an objective test. It's not trying to say or judge or mark anybody in any particular way. It's very much there just to provide you with a starting point to identify how you can develop further in those areas of capability. So if we can move on, please. So hopefully you've all managed to log in. We will ask you as a post-workshop activity to go into the Discovery Tool dashboard and complete our overall digital capabilities questions. They're available on your dashboard, so as soon as you go into the tool, you will see them on the dashboard. There's also a question bank which sits on the left-hand menu bar in the tool, and that will give you access to all of the question sets that we have within there. You are very welcome to complete any of the questions sets that we have in there. We have, as I say, the one overall capabilities question set that will ask you about all those 15 subsections of the framework. So it will cover all areas of our framework and give you a run through in a very holistic way of all of those capabilities. But we also have some other focus question sets that dig into a bit more of a deeper way around specific areas of the framework. So for example, we have 2 question sets aimed at teaching staff, one looking at effective online teaching, which I think might be particularly relevant to your context. It's structured in a way to take you through questions that ask you about all of the different activities that would lead to the development of an effective learning experience for a student, based around one of the models, the Dinah-Lorillard conversational framework, which is one of the pedagogic models that has emerged in the UK as being useful in thinking about how to develop effective online experiences. So even by running through the questions themselves, you're getting ideas of the sorts of things that you might be able to do. We have another question set for teaching staff, teaching in HE, which is a shorter question set, which just explores the role of digital in all aspects of teaching, not just online, and one focused on library staff, and one on the key topic of accessibility and inclusion, and making sure that the experiences we deliver to our students are accessible and inclusive. So a number of question sets, you don't have to do all of them. Please just explore the ones that you feel are relevant to you, but we'd recommend you starting with the overall capabilities questions as a starting point. And then once you run through the questions, there are 2 types of questions. We have an activity question, which will just ask, when doing these sorts of things in your roles, what are these activities can or do you do? And you can just select one or more or none of those. And a confidence question, where you just move the slider bar to say how confident you're feeling in that particular area of capability. So just a mention to say, please do physically move the little circle there. If you leave it right in the middle, it will think that you haven't answered the question. So do just move it along the slider bar. And it's the responses to both of those questions which then lead to the report. So you can, there's a little icon on the left-hand side of the dashboard that says report, so you can return to this report at any point. It provides you with an overall visualization of your strengths and also some potential areas for development in the overall visual summary. And then for each of the areas of capability it asks you about in the questions, it will say a little bit about what that means. It will give you a level, so developing, capable or proficient, and then some tailored next steps, so some action points that you might want to consider helping you move forward in your journey, and then some resources. So these are freely available resources that have been hand selected from our collection and linked to and made available to you to go and explore. There's normally about 8 or 9 resources highlighted for each of those areas of capability. And once you've been through the report, right at the bottom, there's an option to request to get a digital badge to say that you've completed that question set. So again, important to say that the report itself isn't aimed at suggesting that you need to be proficient in all these areas, because very much the skills are going to be role dependent. So we see the report really as a starting point again to inform conversations around overall staff or student development. So yeah, that's an important point to note. So the main way that you would access our resources is going through the questions, getting your reports and exploring any relevant resources. But you can also browse the entire resource collection in the resource bank, which is also, again, a little icon on the left-hand menu bar. That just provides access to all of the resources in the collection. You can browse by question set. So for example, you can just browse all of the resources we have for teaching staff or for library staff or for new students. We've also been working with some publishers. So for example, Microsoft resources, Google resources, we've highlighted in separate collections also on that resource bank page. So if you are a Microsoft university, you can go in and explore the resources specifically relating to those technologies. So for the institutions in the UK that we work with who subscribe to the tool, we also make available some institutional data. You won't see this data just because we're making the tool available for the purpose of the workshop and your exploration of your own skills. But just to note that there will be some anonymized data shared with both Jisc and Eko-Konnect to inform the recommendations that we do make to the British Council. So there'll be nobody identified in there. We'll just see some high-level aggregated results around some overall levels that might help to inform the recommendations we make. So in terms of a post-workshop activity, once we've finished here today, as I said, please do log into the tool. Feel free to explore the questions that we have. We'd recommend starting with the overall digital capabilities question set. And we'd be really interested if you could read your reports, see how well you think that that fits with your knowledge, have a look at the recommendations and the suggestions and consider how well that's going to work for you. And we would be very grateful for your feedback really on how useful that exercise has been. We will make the tool available to you until the 30th of June. And all you need to do to make sure that the report that you get you can keep is just save it. There's a little PDF icon on the report itself. You click on that and that will save your report to a PDF document that you can save. So hopefully that has made sense to everybody and you have been inspired to go and have a little look and explore at some of the resources that we've mentioned. But just to pause there for any questions.
So any questions?
Any in the chat, Owen?
Right.
I'm hoping everyone is going away and inspired to try out that tool. I know we've all done it, and it really is very valuable in terms of identifying areas that you feel confident in and areas which are there for development, and just gives, I think, a broader understanding of what we mean to be digitally capable and what the different terms are that we were highlighting from the framework, Lisa. So
unless you understand where you are now, it can be quite difficult to see how your journey needs to develop. And so the tool itself really is just providing that starting point to say, this is where I'm at. These are the critical areas for me to focus on, and here's some resources that might be able to help. And we're encouraging the universities that we work with just to explore their anonymized data in a way that will help inform their conversations about, for example, where they may need to put some more support or effort to support students or different staff groups. So hopefully that's just provided a bit of context.
I think we've just had a question from Victor in the chat, which I'm just replying to. So in the pre-workshop or the registration information, you would have received a link to the documents that we've been referring to. One was in relation to all the URLs of the links that we've been bringing to discussion today. And the other is a document that talks you through how to access the discovery tool. So we can certainly make sure that that information is accessible to you after the event, after today as well.
And the two things probably just to highlight as you're logging in is you need to select Eko-Konnect as your organisation, not your own university. For the purposes of the workshop, we set it up so that you can access it via Eko-Konnect. And you'll also be asked for a department area, and if you can use administration, that would be wonderful. That would just help us organise the information.
Somebody is asking if the platform can be added to the Zoom app. I think, and again, I think it was very important that after you registered for this workshop, you would have actually received an email with a number of pre-workshop instructions that we would have hoped you had been able to do before the workshop. So you may need to all kind of refer to that for links to the resources, although we're putting links in the chat at the moment. But just in order to access the discovery tool and some of the other resources that Lisa's been talking about, please do refer to the first notification email you received after you registered, because most of the information on how to access these tools is highlighted there. And I think Sarah and Ola are trying to put links to the resources in the chat as well, but you do have them in your email boxes.
And thank you, Ola. You have added in those links as we've been talking as well. So if you click on the links that Ola has just put you into the chat, you will then be able to access the documents that we've been referring to, and the one in particular about how to access the discovery tools. So we hope that that's something that will be really valuable in looking at and sharing with your staff as well. So that moves us on, I think, quite nicely to some of the discussion that we had at the start of the workshop around what are the challenges for you in developing the digital skills of staff and students. But I will just stop there because I think we have got a raised hand, Ola. So do we want to just double check if someone has got a question or would like to take the mic?
All right, they've been given permission to speak. Mohammed Al-Khali, you can speak now.
Unmute and do take the mic, Mohammed.
Okay, I hope you can hear me now.
We can perfectly, thank you.
Okay. This is a very interesting presentation, and we have learned a lot, particularly in the issue of digital capabilities. But the question I have is, what are we trying to assess? Are we making a measurement in terms of yardstick on what we want? The digital capability in the Nigerian university in terms of digital learning, teaching, learning, and what have you. Are we trying to measure, or we want to assess the capability digitally in terms of Nigerian university or otherwise?
So I think that there's two elements to this workshop. I think that for the element that we have just been talking about is for you as in your role as a leader within your university to be able to assess your digital capabilities and areas that you might like to develop further, so that you are able to see the areas of support that your staff may be using. What we are doing as the Digital University Project is to take recommendations from the workshop, from the interviews, from the work that Owen is doing, to inform the British Council around what further support, what opportunities for collaboration there may be there, what resources Eko-Konnect might need in being able to help take you forward on your journey in terms of the universities within Nigeria at the moment to lead that digital transformation. So I hope that helps. And the next aspect that we are going to be moving into is going to be very much focusing around the organizational challenges. So this is really the opportunity of sharing what support, what would help you, what are you doing, what approaches are working well, to enable you to help staff work in that online environment and to support students as we've been talking about through the workshop. And then we will again share with you a resource that can help perhaps you start that journey of digital transformation and looking at what are the different areas that need to be considered and how far you are with your development. So I hope that this is just the start of the dialogue around this topic and conversation today. I hope that helps. So if we move on then to the slides that we're going to be looking at now, the section that we're going to be looking at now, which is the challenges. And I'm very aware that that Owen, at the start of the presentation, you were sharing that context. We had some of our participants sharing the challenges, which I think very much echo the interviews that Professor Laurie Phipps has been doing with Owen around the different challenges that are coming through that you are experiencing. But this is an opportunity to think about honing down back on what we were saying at the start. This is about thinking about what are the digital skills that you, your staff, and your students need in order to be able to work effectively in this new normal, in the online environment. What are the current challenges and what is working well? Now we have the opportunity of again gathering that feedback on a Padlet, and we will put the link to that in the chat window. Thank you, Lisa, for doing that. But we also have the opportunity of getting you to take the microphone or adding those comments into the text chat. But this is an opportunity now for us to hear from you what some of those challenges are. And then we will move on to the next section, which will be able to, again, hopefully share some resources to start that dialogue and moving us forward. So if anyone would like to take the mic, please do, or if you would like to use the Padlet, please do so. I will stop sharing my screen and just get the Padlet up, but that might also encourage some conversations in the chat as well.
It would be great to have some verbal interaction on that. I think we've heard from the ICT Director of Usmanu Danfodio University concerning some of the challenges he's experiencing in his university. So it'd be great to hear from other universities or some of the regulators. I know TETFund is here, NUC is here. I think there's someone from the Ministry of Education who's also here. So it would be great to just verbalize or hear some of the challenges that you think we might be having, as well as filling the Padlet site that has been shared. But it'd be great to hear from you as well. It'd be nice to hear from you. So if you'd like to make some observations or comments about challenges or maybe things you feel you may be doing well, we'd like to hear them. This is an opportunity to share.
And thank you. I've got sharing the Padlet screen, so thank you for sharing these comments. It's really valuable. In the UK, we've been using a pyramid model. Some of you may.
Right, so we have someone's hand up, Sarah.
Okay, super.
Adewara Ademola, okay, you can speak now.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Very clearly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, when we talk about the challenges, some of the challenges that we have in my own university is quite different from other universities.
What university is that, please?
This is University of Lagos.
Okay.
Distance Learning Institute, University of Lagos.
Okay.
So the challenges vary from one university to the other. Well, with the new norms that we are operating in Nigeria now, you'll notice that this has introduced us to so many things that we can exploit in ICT world. And as a result of this, the ICT world has been able to change our orientation in terms of our teaching, in terms of questions and some of the interactions we have in the University of Lagos in the couple of months to this time since the pandemic started. Yes, for some of the challenges that we are having now is the use of these facilities for teaching, to deploy it for teaching, to have an unbroken teaching, an effective teaching, such that the students will be able, the students and the lecturers or the facilitators will be able to enjoy the online learning facility. Because these days, when you look at the problem and some of the challenges, particularly those of us in Lagos are facing, because of the distance, moving from one end to the other. I want to come from Lekki area to University of Lagos. It will take me couples of hours to get to university. And when there is rain, forget about it that day. So for this reason, these are some, but the online learning will assist in this way and will help us to overcome most of these challenges. One of those things that we need is, how do we increase our broadband for our students, not to have been able to complete? Because the complaints of the student is that, yes, you are teaching, we couldn't hear you very well. The lecture is not, we couldn't hear the lecturer. There is no much interaction. How can we bring much more interaction into the system? Number two, how can we engage more of our students in learning activities? These are areas that I want us to. Thank you.
Well, before I let Sarah bring her own expert knowledge to this, I'll just mention a few of my own observations, Dr. Adewara. And again, what I'd like to say is that the infrastructural challenges are immense. We recognize that as being part of an issue that we do need to address. Now, in terms of the ability of students to be able to engage and have adequate bandwidth and the affordability issues, there are different options being looked at. Obviously, we need to be able to get bigger pipes for better internet access, and that's really part of the primary role that Eko-Konnect is involved in, is to ensure that the connectivity for research and education improves. And there are a number of initiatives that we've started with the different stakeholders, which is the infraco companies, to sort of try to tackle that. But these are going to be medium to long-term issues. But one of the immediate possibilities that is being explored, and I'm happy that there are representatives from TED Fund and NUC and some of the other national bodies in on this workshop. One of the other opportunities that we would like to be able to explore properly is this whole concept of approaching the telecommunications sector and offering this whole concept of zero-rated access to certain platforms. I believe the University of Lagos tried to adopt that measure to do some of the online exams. I know it was that initiative was looked at by the CITS, but I think that due to one or two technical challenges, it could not be implemented. But the idea is that if there is some kind of cloud-based system, or where students and lecturers are accessing learning content, then the telecos would be able to monitor those URLs. And so if you're hitting those URLs with your devices, the teleco companies will actually not deduct any data from your account. That is the zero rate access to certain learning platforms. And so that is something that we think can be explored, whereby telcos can provide data tariffs to students, whereby they buy a 5 gig tariff, which gives a student 5 gig of data for X amounts of Naira. They can use that data in any way they choose, but once they're hitting certain learning platforms, data is not deducted from from their accounts for those recognized cloud platforms or learning platforms. That is something that could really be done. And I think the likes of TED Fund and NUC could work with a consortium of people from the education sector to approach government and the NCC about trying to investigate how that could be done. So government with the NCC and stakeholders are actually providing enabling digital transformation, and telcos actually, if they model it very well, can actually still make revenues from that. So I think that maybe sort of kind of answers that particular question. But again, the other issues again that this workshop is really trying to also address is, even with that infrastructure available, do the staff have the necessary pedagogical skills, instructional design skills, to be able to create the content that can be consumed in a manner that students will adequately be able to learn? And in order for staff to be able to do that, they must have the basic digital and literacy skills here. We can't obviously talk about everything in this workshop, but I am hoping, certainly from an Eko-Konnect perspective, that these resources that Jisc have, the expertise that Jisc have in these areas, would lead to consultancy collaborations where we can actually follow on with providing more assistance and help through different channels, even working with the national stakeholders, so that some of this capacity that is required is developed. So as Sarah and Lisa have been saying, this is really a workshop that really wants to get us all thinking, all right, what are my skills? What am I lacking? What is my institution lacking? How can I better engage and make the assessments of the needs, the digital need of my staff and students? The infrastructure one is well known, we all know that, but this capability is also a big issue that sometimes tends to get ignored. So I'm conscious that we don't have so much time. So I hope that has sort of helped to answer the question in some context, Dr. Dewara. I believe
we have another hands up, Ibrahim Abubakar. You can speak now, Mr. Ibrahim. Ibrahim, Mr. Ibrahim, you can speak. If not, we have other hands up. We want to go to someone else for now. Mohammed Al-Khali.
Thank you very much for another opportunity. That is why at the beginning of my questions, I was saying that can we go beyond, understanding the digital capacity or understanding or having the skill of digital capacity, maybe to go into need assessment of each country and each university. That will enable you to know who need what in terms of particularly learning and development, which is more of concern to me as a teacher or as a university, lecturer, so that all the issue around the blended learning, because I think that is what should be obtained in the university, rather than maybe thinking that we can provide, the totality of e-learning and online teaching. So is there any way we can go beyond just the rhetoric of understanding digital learning to maybe go into what capacity is at which, institution, and to also maybe recommend the best way to do, and either through the National University Commission or the TED Fund or the resources itself. I'm sure and I believe that for this to succeed, we also require some purchases and some resources to ensure that both the learner and the teacher are a little equipped in terms of what we are looking forward for. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mohammed, and I'll let Sarah and Lisa speak in a moment. However, I do want to actually mention that there are 2 workshops being held. This is the first workshop, which was specifically targeted at leaders. And I do appreciate that there are some lecturers and hands-on teachers in this workshop. But the orientation of this workshop was slightly different. It was geared towards the leaders. The second workshop, which is being held on Monday, is essentially the same content, but a little bit more focused on the actual doing that you've kind of mentioned. This is a little bit more strategic for the national stakeholders and leaders like the directors of e-learning, online learning, ICT directors. But I do accept that there's a good number of actual teachers in this workshop. So maybe that's why the slant of this workshop is a little bit different from maybe what you may have been expecting. But one of the things that will happen is that the recording of the second workshop on Monday will certainly be made available to you as well in that context. Sarah, Lisa, I don't know if you've got any comments to Mohammed before we take the 2 questions that are remaining.
No, I think that point is a really valuable one, Mohammed, and I think having and that's something we're working with universities in the UK on at the moment, because again they're recognizing that we need to know where we're starting from, and that assessment is a helpful way of baselining existing practice. So you will be able to do that for your practice and to share that with your colleagues up until the 30th of June to get that snapshot, that feel. And we'll be able to use the data that we get back to make those recommendations to the British Council. And it will also be valuable for Owen and Eko-Konnect to be able to have that information to again inform the recommendations that Eko-Konnect are working on as a result of these workshops as well. So really valuable point. But what I will do is also say that, as Owen has mentioned, the workshop we're doing on Monday, we will be having quite a lot of resources in there that are focusing more about the doing and how you are. Some great resources there to help structure online learning, to think about the resources that you can use with staff to upskill and develop their practice in relation to that. So there is a lot of wealth of information there that we hope will be valuable for you to go off and use and to share wider, and recognizing, as we're seeing in the Padlet, that there are already some great practice that people are sharing in terms of some of the things that are working well. So thank you also for sharing that. So more to come, Mohammed, and very, very definitely value your input into today's workshop. So I'm going to.
Sarah, do you want to continue? We still have a couple of hands up.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to go back to my slide so we can, when we're ready, we can return.
What do you want?
Okay. Was Abubakar still there?
Ibrahim Abubakar. So you can speak now.
Right. I know. I think I also saw Abubakar Issa, the ICT Director from the Federal Ministry of Education. I think his hand was raised.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Ibrahim Abubakar from Usman University. Thank you for this presentation.
Your link is very bad, Ibrahim. We can't really hear you.
Okay, I have sent a message. What I was trying to say. Maybe you can look at my post.
We can't hear you. If you say you've sent something in the chat, then we will try to respond to that.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Allah, can we take the next person?
Ahmed Shafi, then we'll take Joseph Udo after.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Owen and other panelists, as well as members here. My major concern is really about policies that needs to be set up to drive the process of e-learning in our institutions, most especially given the fact that we are just, some of us are just starting, like in my university, we are just starting. So mine is more of a question, what kind of policies should we be concerned with in terms of maybe infrastructure, capacity, buildings, contents, and the rest of them that we should be concerned with for proper takeover of this e-learning in our institutions, given the fact that we are just commencing? Where can we lay our hands on some of these best practices in terms of policies, if they exist? So if you can share some of this with us, that will be really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shafe, for that. And I'm sure Sarah and Lisa can contribute to that. But what is great to be able to do in terms of preparing and driving that policy is also having a clear and concise understanding of some of the needs. And I think that is also very important to take on board in consideration of the policies that need to be devised and disseminated. But I'm sure that they have some more information they can provide. Sarah?
We can, and we will share with you some links. I mean, with the work that we've been doing in Jisc over the years, we've been working with universities to think about the strategy that pulls all of this together. Because as you've mentioned there are these different strands. You have got the infrastructure. What we are talking about today is in relation to the digital capabilities, the skills for staff and students. There's the learning and teaching and assessment practices, and there's estates. All of this does need to come together and to be linked in to be able to have that holistic view around the digital vision that you're setting for your university. So we have got some helpful guidance, some templates around just the things that you need to be thinking about. And the next session that Lisa is going to be, I'm going to be handing over to Lisa to shortly, will start to give you some of that foundation to think about. These are the different things that we need to be considering, and this is how we start to bring it together. So we can certainly, following on from today as well, make sure that we share some of the links to our digital strategy guidance as well.
All right. Hi, Sarah, do you have time for one more question? I think we have
one last question.
Yeah,
and then any
Joseph
other question. Yeah, we'll take Joseph's question, and then any other questions we'll take to at the very end of the workshop, because we do need to finish the content.
All right, Mr. Joseph.
Okay, good morning, all. My name is Joseph Fogo. I represent TED Fund on this platform. It's good to be here. Mine is more of a request. Given from the presentation, Jisc and the UK seem to have really gone quite a mile in being able to develop online learning systems and platforms. So our request is we would like to learn from you and collaborate with you. One, to be able to strengthen the guidelines that we've developed for institutions, that we've asked them to develop their online learning platforms. We just released guidelines based on that. And secondly, also to be able to have the capacity to monitor these platforms to ensure that they meet the minimum guidelines and they continue to add value to the system. So I hope my questions or my what I've said there. Yes.
Thank you, Joseph. I'm sure most of us know who you are, at least from the Nigerian context. Joseph Odo is the ICT Director for TED Fund. And I think we actually had an interview with you, Joseph, with Laurie last week. So yeah, that what you're suggesting is, I think, is really one of the follow-up activities that we'd love to engage with you on. So I think your request is I'm sure Jisc will be very happy to accede to that request. And of course, we in Eko-Konnect, we want to be very involved in that process of working with TEDFund on that. So I'll just say that, and then I'll let, I don't know if Laurie's still on this call or Esther, but okay, right. I think Esther's just basically, Esther Wilkinson Joseph, she's actually the project lead for this project. And I think she's just basically made a comment that they'd be very happy to work with TEDFund in that regard. So yeah, we can carry on that conversation after this workshop, Joseph, definitely.
Oh, and just one quick word from me. Hi everyone, it's Esther again. One thing that I'd like to send as a follow-up to this workshop is we have 3 recent strategies, one on research, one on teaching and learning, and one on further education and skills, or TVET. So we've developed 3 strategies based on all of the work that we've done recently. I don't want to give you that now because I think it would detract from what we're trying to do here, but I will certainly send that over to you, Owen, after this workshop.
Okay, excellent. And the TVET is something that's also a big activity here in Nigeria. So that's very interesting.
Fantastic.
But we digress. So we need to come back to Lisa, and so we can continue with
There was just one delegate was just asking if they could make a comment, Owen, before they run off to another meeting. I'm not sure if we have picked up that.
I'm sorry. Allow you on top of that. I didn't see that. Forgive me if I've ignored somebody.
Yeah, that's Abubakar Issa. Wants to make a quick comment. Yeah.
Oh, please do. Abubakar is the ICT Director from the Federal Ministry of Education. So Abubakar, sir, please do make your comments. Enable his microphone.
Hi, Owen. And
hi, Abubakar. Nice to see you. I'm really pleased.
It's quite nice that I'm following the conversation behind. It's quite interesting, and I think this conversation is timely. And we've had a lot of conversation with you as to how to move the digital learning sphere in the tertiary institution. And I just want to briefly say what we at the ministry are currently doing and are currently thinking. During the pandemic, of course, we created the e-learning platform for the basic school, primary and secondary schools. And surprisingly, we had quite a large number of interests, many people logged on to it. And the telecoms were quite nice. They provided free data, they took data. So what you were saying much earlier on is something that has already been simulated, and I think going forward is something that we can discuss. But like we discussed with you, I think what the ministry is also thinking of doing is creating a cloud. And when we can have this education cloud or a DMC, that everything education is based here, then it's easy to negotiate with the telecom to say anybody who is visiting this site, do this for him, because we have everybody who is here is a student and he needs to have access to this form. Somebody asked a question earlier on about policy. The ministry have just set up a committee to develop e-learning policy for the entire country, but then it's going to be for all segments from basic education to tertiary education that we are working on quietly. I'm sure in the next 2-3 months. And that was part of our discussion with you last week about.
I actually asked the Mahmoud to get me onto that committee. So
yeah, don't worry, we'll surely invite you. And we're also developing a device policy, because we also feel that as a country we need to have a policy on which kind of devices, what kind of format of educational e-learning content we need to provide so that it can be accessible. This is just briefly what I wanted to confirm.
Oh, no, excellent.
Participants are aware that at the ministry we're doing our little best, and I can tell you in the next 1 month, Nigerian e-cloud education sector will be up and running, fully with all the books from kindergarten to high secondary schools that we call them now. We're also talking with NUC, TEDFund, etc., to also participate in the tertiary institution. We're reaching almost 80% with the secondary school version of it, and we should be up and running quickly. And we'll be leveraging on your experience and your expertise to help us in deepen the concept of e-learning. But one of the major challenges we have, which I think we should think about, is our teachers. How do we bring our teachers to speed in e-learning? Whatever content we develop, for long as our teachers can't use it or can't explain it to kids, it's going to be a huge challenge. So like Sarah, Lisa, to think around that, how do you support us? And I also think this also goes not only within the elementary schools, also up to our universities. How do we get our teachers to be digitally literate to be able to use these facilities? Thank you, and I wish you very well.
Thank you very much, Abubakar. I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate the time spent here. And I will engage with you on a number of things that you've actually raised. I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had. But thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo that as well. It's you know, the issues that we're talking about here are not going to be solved in the 2 hours that we have with you today, but I think it's really encouraging here that we're starting to pull out the recommendations from this project and the collaboration that is going to follow, and the ongoing dialogue about these areas. So, you know, as we said at the start, we're not going to have the time to go into the depth, but what we are doing is just showing what is possible and where the areas of further collaboration and development can be taken forward. So really value that, all of those comments that have been shared. Thank you very much for those. And I think that sort of just finishes off nicely before I hand over to Lisa, that the challenges you know, can be summarized around some of the themes that we've been hearing about that are reflected on this slide. It is about that motivation, that desire, that culture to support the learning and the digital transformation. It's about the leadership that's required, the policies that need to underpin that, the resources. You know, we've heard content being mentioned, to able to design content effectively, to be able to use the learning platforms that we have access to. And really importantly, you know, the purpose of today is focusing down on, you know, training that staff and students are going to need in order to be able to develop those digital practices and develop their practices for when they move into the workplace. So I'm going to stop there and hand over to Lisa just to finish off this section. And, you know, going back to what we were saying, so how do we do this? You know, what are the next steps and how can we move on from here? So Lisa, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. So, you know, we've talked a little bit about what digital capabilities look like from an individual perspective, and we just wanted to finish off really by talking about that broader organisational perspective, because if we're truly to move towards enabling our students to thrive, we need our organisations to be enabling developing the cultures, policies, infrastructure we've been discussing to enable and support those digital practices. So Jisc has a similar model to our individual capabilities framework, which focuses more on the organisational level. Sarah, can we just move on to the next slide, please? Which really sort of sought to try and identify the core aspects of an organisation that we would need to be looking at when thinking about developing digital capabilities in its broadest sense. And it includes the infrastructure, it includes the policies and the strategies, it includes the learning, teaching and assessment parts of our organisations, as well as the other aspects. But we wanted to turn that into something more practical that organisations could use as a way, again, of enabling them to self-assess themselves in terms of where they were at. So if we just move on to the next slide, Sarah, please. And the model really captured a lot of learning that we've had in the UK, working with all the different universities that we're working with around the things that are working well for them at an organisational level. And these include, you know, is there that common understanding of digital capabilities across the organisation? And our framework can help with that language. Do you have a strategy which articulates the vision for developing as a digitally capable organisation? And is there some leadership and a strategic lead who's pushing that forward? Is there a cross-institutional stakeholder group? Are all the right people around the table to make sure that all aspects of the organisation are involved in those conversations around building that capability? And importantly around HR, and we touched a little bit on this before, but are digital capabilities embedded in job descriptions, for example, as staff come into the institution? Are they a core part of the induction that staff receive? Are they embedded in the appraisal conversations and the performance review conversations that staff are having? And then there's something around reward and recognition, because unless there's some mechanism for rewarding staff skills, where's the incentive coming from? And we're starting to see in the UK some really nice models of how that's working, to just provide that incentive for staff and students to say, you know, I recognise the importance of developing these digital skills, and I'm going to be rewarded in some way for that. We touched a little bit on building digital capability into the curriculum. It's a very core aspect. It's something that we're going to focus a little bit more on in the workshop on Monday with staff, because the ultimate goal here is to ensure that the students have the skills to thrive in our digital worlds. So we have some resources that can help inform those conversations about how to do that. And also about working in partnership with our students. Jisc and through Sarah have had a lot of innovation work happening around those student-staff partnerships, so that students are engaged in helping to inform the direction of travel. So we took some of those learning and key messages and turned it into a maturity model. The model itself highlights those core aspects across an organisation. So you can look at it from a learning, teaching and assessment perspective. You can look at it from a digital culture perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. And then what we did is we took a range of examples of good practice and highlighted at different levels of maturity what that might look like. So Sarah, next slide, please. And here's just an example of one of the sections in that framework. So this is around digital culture, and it's just highlighting there some examples of actions that you can take at an organisational level to make sure that you have those policies and practices in place to ensure that the organisation, for example, is embracing digital technologies as a key part of business success. And it is around having that leadership, having that cross-stakeholder conversations, and about working with staff and students in partnership. So there's some really concrete suggestions there of things that could be in place that might help you work through this. And I'd recommend in particular having a look at the learning, teaching and assessment section, because that is very much focused on how we can build those curricula which are embedding digital technologies as part of the curriculum, ensuring that digital capabilities are key learning outcomes for students and embedded through that curriculum process. So there might be some good examples there that might help to inform your thinking around policies and strategies in relation to that. So next slide, please, Sarah. So we have a template within the tool itself, and this is again one of the documents that was shared in the pre-workshop information. There's just a little radar diagram that you can use to, in conversation with others in your leadership teams, just use to plot where you think you're at in relation to all of those areas within the model. And it can just provide a nice visual outline to give you a place to start from. It does something a little bit similar, I suppose, to the discovery tool reports in providing you with a starting point to say, well, this is where we're at. Where would we like to be? And then you can select particular examples from the model to say, well, actually, we're going to focus on these areas in the coming months. So a self-assessment template that you can use to explore where you're at that organisational level. And we just wanted to finish really by just returning to sort of the overall purpose. We've talked a lot about capabilities, but actually what we're really looking at is developing ourselves and our students as digitally resilient graduates, able to adapt to tomorrow's challenges, and developing that curiosity and that confidence to navigate a constantly changing digital world, because the technologies and the infrastructure will change around us all the time. But what's really important is developing their confidence to explore and become digitally fluent in the way that they approach working with digital technologies. And that's really been the purpose of all of the work that we've done and the tools that we've provided today to support those conversations and enabling that. So I'll hand back over to Sarah just to finish and close.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, hopefully that will touch on and I think build on some of the questions that we were saying around, you know, where do we go next? How do we take this forward? Some useful prompts there just to start thinking about the different roles within your organization that you need to work with in order to develop that emerging vision for your university in relation to the national work that is going to be going on. So I know it has been a very, very rushed through today to try and show you the different resources and the different tools that you may want to pick up and use in supporting you with your next steps. I hope it has given you some ideas, perhaps thinking about, you know, what one thing are you going to do as a result of this workshop? What one resource has really helped you in terms of thinking about that next step on for you in your organization. We have got the option now of gathering that sort of feedback in terms of what you hope to do as a result of the workshop, or what one thing might you want to take forward. But we have also got a poll, Ola. Do we want to run the poll first and just gather that information? And then
okay, I can run that now.
Yeah, let's run it because people are disappearing because of we've gone past the hour.
If you are able to share your feedback, that would be helpful. Has the workshop helped raise your awareness of digital skills and capabilities? Okay, we've still got some people voting.
So those that haven't answered, we will have to split between no and not sure then.
Okay, do we want to end that one? Thank you. And do we want to just run the next one and then we'll open up the mic for feedback? So which resources did you find most useful?
Can we only choose one? Can't we select all?
I think there is the option of selecting more than one. If anyone wants to make a last chance to vote.
I think our framework and discovery tool are going head to head at the moment.
They are. Okay, that's really helpful. Just
Framework was my particular favorite.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ola. So did we want to open up the mic very quickly, have a look to see what comments we're getting in the chat around next steps as a result? Anyone would like to share anything?
And Ola, I think somebody's got their hand raised, so we might as well quickly get their question while we're doing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's on the question of what one thing do I plan to do as a result of this workshop. I found that discovery tool very, very useful. After going through it, I saw all the comments, but I really need to really read through all those categories that you have provided and the kind of recommendations made, I think once one understands all those things and one can follow all those recommendations, then I'm sure the level of digital literacy, not only of us, as drivers of this process, even the students and the rest of them will really improve. So that is one thing that I intend to really follow very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Actually, just to emphasize that, I think many of us saw the emails and kind of overlooked all these rich resources that Jisc are making available to us. So I really would encourage everybody to go back and look at those resources. They are so useful and they are very, very rich. And a workshop cannot do justice to what's actually been made available to us. And that's for policymakers, university leaders, teachers, we as NRENs. There is so much information there that we can leverage to help with our strategies and improving our digital capabilities. So I'm hoping all the e-learning directors and others will look at that, because the resources are very rich and we need to look at that.
Thank you, Owen, and that leads on very nicely to the slide. And thank you, Ola, as well, for putting the link in again as a reminder to those resources there. And as we said, thank you very much for that feedback on the discovery tool. We're really pleased that you found that helpful, and I'm hoping that will be a prompt for others to have a look at the tool and to be able to work through that as well. As you say, there's a lot of resources there for you to look at and freely available for you to access as well in terms of thinking about that guidance. And I think those that are particularly interested in the supporting staff with their online delivery to also have a look at the question set that's relating to effective learning and teaching online, because that really does then cover how to do it. What are the key issues that you need to be thinking about? And so again, some really valuable content for you to look at and to follow up on. The maturity model there is also one to take away. We would really value your input into the post-workshop survey that Ola has set up, because that will very much inform the recommendations as well as the feedback that we've had throughout the course of this workshop this morning to the British Council. So please, if you are able to complete that, that will be appreciated. I'm sure we'll be sending you reminders there for that poster today. Yes. And also, as Lisa mentioned at the start, we would very much like to continue this dialogue. We have a community of practice, which is an online community with practitioners in the UK, and it would be wonderful to start to be able to share and join in the discussions that we are having around these challenges and issues. So I hope today has been the start of a dialogue. I very much know that through the connections that we're making with yourselves and with Owen, we will be able to follow on those discussions and most importantly, make sure that the outcomes from this project can really help inform your developments on taking your digital journey forward. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hand over to Owen for any final words.
Well, I just really would like to thank you, Sarah and Lisa, for a wonderful job, for all the dedication that you put into the practice of digital transformation and e-learning. It's really been wonderful working with you, and hope to continue to do that. And to the other members of the Jisc panel, Esther, Philip, Thomas, and Laurie, thank you so much for being in this workshop and for all the work you're doing on this project. We're really keen to collaborate a whole lot closely with you going forward. And I'm hoping that all the attendees of the workshop, I hope you found that useful. I do suspect it was probably slightly different from what you were expecting, but I hope this will be very useful thinking that will help to really move forward in terms of your digital capabilities individually and corporately. So thank you for spending the time with us, because it's been over 2 hours. Very much appreciated that you were all here, and I just want to just say thank you to everyone for your attendance. And we will be following up with every one of you with the resources and links to anything that you may have missed during the workshop. So thank you very much. I probably want to leave the last word with Esther. If you've got anything you'd like to say, Esther, if you're still there.
Thanks, Owen. Yeah, I'm still here. I've been avidly listening in, a wide variety of discussions. It's been really inspiring. Thank you, everyone. Owen and I met a number of years ago, and we've met at conferences over and over again. And it's really good to see those discussions finally coming to fruition. So as I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, hopefully this will be the start of a beautiful relationship between Jisc and all of your organisations in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther. And on that note, everyone, I wish you a very good day, and thank you very much for joining this workshop. Ola, you can probably stop recording.